can, similar to the back foot, cut above the elbow and come down and then across. We usually just like cutting all the way across. So I'm gonna make a cut. I stand my knife up, I feel where the elbow is, and I go towards the back of the pig, above the elbow. And you go for a while until you actually get to the humerus. Actually, it's not the humerus yet, but you can come across there. Just so you're over where the bone is. I can feel the bone. I'm not gonna cut all the way around, just down to the bone. And then I'm gonna take a saw and put in that spot. Saw through it until I'm sawing all the way through the bone. Oh, hey, okay, take it easy here, John. That's my knife. Take it easy. Doug and I are very protective of our own personal knives. I think it's still do the testing. See if that's any better.
What's your typical use for the hock? Just
in
smoke
our
it
world, we cure it and smoke it and put it in soups and beans and things like that.
Yeah.
Where was it? If you have German,
Is there
heritage,
anything
you might
else
know
to
of
do with it?
Schweinhaxen, which is a cooked hock that is delicious. And then there's that bone dust that I think you guys have talked about. Basically below the spine, and the spine and above is called the Boston butt. Depending on the butcher you go to, usually the spine and the feather bones are taken off of a Boston butt. Every once in a while you'll go a place and they'll leave it on, but usually this part is removed, which we're going to do here in a little bit. And the picnic ham is, I'll show you once we get to it. The problem right now is that these ribs are in our way, and we need to take them out, and we're going to take the spine out. To do that, we're going to make a cut on the ribs. Different people at this point have different methods, but I usually go to the bottommost part of the spine and sort of cut parallel to it, but I'm really cutting the ribs. I leave a little bit of the curved ribs right here. Some people that do this, that want all of the ribs, will cut all the way up here, just through the ribs, to pull those off. You can do it either way. Some people will even cut down here further.
If they don't like ribs.
Could I get a couple paper towels? Well, these ribs you'll see in a minute are different than the ribs we took off of them.
Like this way?
Yeah, I'm just gonna cut where I said first, thank you.
I think it's more tangential to that.
Thank you, Brian. Okay. It's fine. Thank you, Brian.
And this cut is just to separate the Boston butt and the picnic?
It's actually, right now, yes, we can say that. But this is a combo cut, so I'm gonna saw through the ribs, which is one reason I have it off the edge like this, because I have to drop my handle because the ribs are angled. I really just want to cut through the ribs and not the flesh underneath. And then I'm going to cut the flesh underneath, but I'm going to run into the shoulder blade. And then once I run into the shoulder blade, I'll saw again. Okay. Like that. And then because this is a pretty long cut, I'm going to use my longer knife. I'm going to cut down through here. Right here, I'm hitting the shoulder blade. So I'm going to come down this way.
You want to turn this way?
And just like the hock, I'm just exposing where the shoulder blade is so I can saw through it here in just a moment. It's right in here. This is another place where, like, I don't know if you guys saw when I was cutting, when Jeff was cutting, these ribs are built to move. Like, they do it all the time. And if the muscle isn't like cold and it hasn't had time to dry, these like to keep on moving. So the flex you'll notice is a little bit unfortunate.
You just come down the shoulder.
So I've cut down to the shoulder blade. Now I'm going to use the saw and finish cutting through the shoulder blade to get our Boston butt versus picnic cut. And then I finish all the way to the table. this is not a class about salami, but Doug and I do not cut up a front shoulder like this when we're making salami. We treat it much differently. You'll have to come to a charcuterie class to figure that out. So we don't have time right now for that.
Why did you guys get so into charcuterie and salami and that sort of stuff?
Because it's delicious.
You know, that's a good question. It's not even the money thing. It wasn't that. It was we were just really curious at the beginning. We knew that prosciutto had something about it that people liked, and it's been made for hundreds and hundreds of years. So we figured like we should try that because there's something to it. And we know that we knew at that time, even before we started, that it was made from a pig leg and salt. Well, I'm sure we can figure this out somehow. So then it was that, and then it was like, well, how do you make pancetta? And figure that out. How do you make capicola? And figure that out. You taste all the things, and it was delicious. And then Doug was raising pigs at that point. And he was like, well, I can just raise a couple more pigs, and we could have a pig for fresh cuts and a pig for cured cuts. When you're raising your own pigs, why not do that? So then we had whole pigs to work with and cure. And so we had more experimentation, and we loved it, and so we just kept making it work. Cool.
2 quick questions. Is there any advantage to sheeting out these ribs before cutting them in half? Just like taking them all out?
Well, they're connected to the spine. So at some place you have to disconnect them from the spine.
Okay.
That's the main reason. But you could take out, if you weren't going to use these as ribs, you could take out this plus the spine and put it all in the stock pot.
Okay. And then the shoulder blade we just cut through, do you ever cut around that and bone that out too?
When we're doing salami,
Okay.
yes. Yep. Now,
So it all depends. It just depends on what.
it always depends. Depends on what you want. These ribs that are left on the picnic side, we're going to talk about first. This is one of the more fascinating parts of a pig to me, is underneath this seam of muscle that's right underneath the ribs, there are thin layers of fat that are like sheets of paper. I don't know if you guys can see them right here. They're just really thin pieces of fatty tissue, because that part of the pig moves a lot, so they have to be able to flex and move. But if you start right there, you can actually peel these ribs with that section of meat on it. So these are really, really meaty ribs. So Doug and I refer to these as country ribs. Country ribs is variable depending on where you live in the country. Sometimes country ribs don't even have meat on them. I mean bones on them. But this is when Doug and I do country ribs. This is what we do. So you can actually just separate a lot of it. You might need your knife a little bit to break some of that tissue up. On a lot of pigs, depending on how it was stuck, sometimes there's like blood trauma in here. But what I'm about to cut through is a lot of the vascular tissue because the heart was sitting right here. So that's why there's like a blood vessel right here I can stick my pinky into because it's one of the main ones that comes out of the heart. So when I cut through there, you'll see blood come out, but sometimes in this soft tissue, you'll actually see blood shot through this, which is not unusual. It happens. It's not really in this one, but sometimes you'll see it there. And you're gonna just keep cutting through this tissue. There's some of those blood vessels. And I know that the end of the sternum is up here, and I know the sternum's all the way down here because you guys included the whole sternum when you cut it in half. That was one of the set points. You went to the end of it. So the whole sternum is on here. If you don't care about ribs, you could cut all the meat off of these, which is not the end of the world, I suppose, but you could do it. But these make really nice, if you're into barbecue and you like meaty ribs, this is the place to get nice meaty ribs off your pig, in my opinion. Now, and it has all of that on them. You can leave them as that. Usually we clean them up a little bit. And I'm not going to guarantee it's going to work, but I like cutting off the sternum. And then I like cutting mine into individual ribs. So if you cut off the sternum, you can cut right in between all those so you'll have individual ribs. You don't have to do this with this cut. But if you want to do it, you can find the cartilage ends. That's where Doug was talking about the costal cartilage from the other ribs. That's where it is. Usually if you cut right underneath that, you can cut all the way down through here. Now this pig seems kind of tough. Has it been tough cutting on the cartilage?
I went through the cartilage in this thing.
So sometimes you can cut through the cartilage. So this is not quite as set up as I would like. So you cut through the cartilage up to the top here. This top one's always on here. So the last rib. It's all right. So then you have these, and you can cut them individual down through each cartilage right there.
What's the advantage to having them individual instead
Then
of
you have
multiple?
this one. It's just like the bacon. I'm making more ribs. Just for cooking, sometimes like just like in this way.
I seem to have a little bit more of this white fat on here.
You can just trim it off.
Just
Yep.
trim it off first.
Yep.
Did you cook your ribs with that top part on?
This?
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Yep. Just showing you a different option.
You can-
I'm not actually sure what's happening to these ribs after I cut them.
So when you said you cut the sternum off, is that just this stuff here in the front?
That's all of this.
Oh, that whole thing.
Yeah, and so when I was showing you for our purposes, this is all going to be ground into sausage. But if you wanted to do a picnic ham, you basically just follow the lines of that round piece right there. Usually has the bone in, can make a nice ham. Doug and I usually don't make ham out of the picnic, but some people do. It's perfectly fine. You would just follow those lines. You do have to cut through some muscles. It's not completely seamable. But you basically do this number, get down underneath it, pull that out.
Keeps moving.
We are going to turn this into sausage for our part. You were going to eat a cured, I shouldn't say cured, a prepared meat tomorrow, a potted meat that we make. That you had a version of over there, that rillette that Chris made, that was made with venison, that sort of shredded venison dish. You can make that with pork. It's very good with pork. We brought some that we made. But these fatty bits, if you don't want to grind this up, this stuff here and over here makes excellent rillette fodder. You would cut it up into chunks, season it, slow cook it until the meat is shreddable, and then go further from that point. But you do not have to do what I'm doing here, Jeff. I'm just pulling out the picnic ham. But all of this is going to end up being sausage and or skin.
You could just take that whole thing out and cure it, and then it could be a ham.
Yep. Yep.
What else could you do besides grinding it up and making a ham out of it?
You could use it for salami. You could barbecue it. This would probably be great barbecue.
Yeah, I missed your first cut. So what was your first cut to start taking out that picnic?
It was the deepest.
Oh, I get.
First cut.
Basically, come right around.
Oh, I see.
Here. So you
don't even get the
mine is usually right here. I don't include this piece. Usually cut right behind it. You don't have to do it that way. Into the large section of that muscle. So you come up under the ribs as far as you can, and then you come behind these feather bones. Thankfully, the way these feather bones are, they're actually just peeling away from this muscle, which is not normal, but I'm just going to take advantage of it.
You use rib pulling tools.
We have a rib pulling tool that is at our shop that we've used 2 or 3 times.
Not worth it.
I don't think so. The one that we have doesn't work the way we'd like it to. A rib puller is like a T-shaped handle that's got a nylon strap loop connected to the end, and you start a rib like this. You put the rib puller on it and you pull, and it separates the meat from the bone individually. A lot of times you'll see it if people are taking out individual ribs off of the belly. Instead of taking the spare ribs off, they actually take each individual rib out and leave the rib meat on the belly to make more bacon. Every once in a while you see people use those if they're Frenching out a rack of lamb or something like that where the bone is clean. So we don't often use it, basically. Okay. So I'm going to cut up underneath these feather bones. Again, I'm kind of pressing up with my knife against the bone so that it stays against the bone and not into the flesh that I don't want to cut into. And whoever wants to mirror this is welcome to.
Anybody want to do this one?
It's right there.
Yeah, go for it.
Jonathan, up to the plate. It's a baseball.
Cat Stevens play baseball?
There's a knife right here.
Oh, yeah. I got it for you. Thank you.
Yep, we're gonna get right underneath those guys, try to stay tight to them. And after the turn of the neck, you'll run out of them. This is your last one, and then it comes down, so they're not here, so.
Okay, so you go
I didn't
around
want you-
and then-
Yep, you got it.
Seems to be a theme in fall as well.
Heard that before. For the dog.
I think I made my own cut here. Something new. I tried to replicate what you did. I don't know
It's called
what.
the Tennessee Band.
Something. Half a picnic. I have a hole in the skin at the bottom, so that's why I'm sure I did something wrong.
If anybody gets super bored,
Yeah, this is at the corner here where it meets.
Yeah.
Just like,
so there's some knobby bones.
Yeah, okay.
So it's a little bit deceiving because it feels like those two cuts should meet, but they don't
Yeah.
because it's little knobby bones. Which kind of have to work your knife around. How's everyone doing?
Great.
You get what? Music? Everyone's getting so quiet. You're gonna start asking questions.
And at this point, if
Really
it had
personal
cured better last night, or not cured, firmed up better last night?
Say that
If it had set up better last night and it cooler?
All of this cutting is looking better. If it had
So this is
set up,
my new cut.
the main part of the
This
setting up in this
fantastic.
case is
And the
dry.
skin below it.
If it had been hanging in open air, so I could get all the way around it,
That's,
it would have
what,
been.
what is that?
It feels cold.
What are we
So the
supposed to
cold
do?
is not the problem.
Cut it up in
Cut it off.
pieces.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
You can work on this if you.
I'm just gonna
There's skin on it though.
slice.
Yeah, it looks like this strip right here could be bacon if you wanted.
Yeah, I think so. Like if we wanted to.
We're supposed to skin it, right?
Yeah.
believe it or not, that's a term that exists in the world. I didn't come up with it or misappropriated.
Hot boning.
Boning is a thing, and it's done in certain parts of the world, like West Palm Beach, where if you don't have an option to put it away, you have to just see the thing through. And so, there are, as you can imagine, like the whole planet, there's a whole bunch of things to the equation. And putting the hog away in one day is something that
That sounds exhausting.
Is that why you think?
it's also slippery.
Yep. And at the end is the
Yeah.
atlas joint. The atlas joint is thicker.
Awful.
It
Imagine
goes into the
cutting
meat.
250 pounds of jello.
Yeah.
So do you think that's what led to really the majority of cultures around that part of the whole globe tends to throw the whole hog on the ground?
To roast it?
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Because of that reason, I mean, it's just.
Yeah, that's why barbecue even is from the south.
Or but the skin, is that skin?
Yeah.
This is a file.
I guess that's a very regionally specific thing.
Yeah,
to
we're
the US.
like, forget about this. We're just gonna cook it.
That's right. And then everybody gathers around, for the feast. You can't put it away.
Pick off the bones, which is fun too.
Yeah, it is.
Like these guys,
Yep.
I guess, cut through.
Try not to.
These are not like ribs you want to eat, like.
No, I mean, this is why the stock pot exists. This meat. I mean, if you really wanted a lot of ground meat, you could cut in between all of these and sort of excavate all of this meat. But if you put it in the stock pot, that becomes another dish. But you could do it, you could be a little more silly about it.
So, fun fact, one time we had ribs, and I kept the whole spine there like that, we just cooked them up, and I was chewing on the spine because there's meat on it, right?
Yeah.
It's ribs, there's meat there. Well, my kids thought it was the craziest thing in the world, so ever since then they call me Jeff Pop, because they thought it was just some crazy, country bumpkin thing.
That's funny. Yeah.
There's nothing.
And my one son has like a good Gollum voice, so he calls me Chef Bob with a Gollum voice.
Yeah, you see where that joint goes in the tip. It's not much. But we can make a boneless Boston butt, which we're gonna do. Is this all gonna be ground?
I don't think it has to be. I feel like I need to take a stand. Resist the very slippery spot.
Are we not hearing it?
No. But I can show you the cut out of it and talk about the whole process. But we're not doing it. Because it's also weird. This is not our pork. We are going to cure bacon and a ham, and that actually goes back to our farm, and we're going to cure it and smoke it. We're going to bring it back eventually, but I guess theoretically we could cure this coppa, but we had no plan. But we can talk about the whole thing. Do you think we should cure a coppa? If you want.
Can I go to donate 1 to 2 years or however long it takes?
Usually a coppa this size will end up taking like 8 months.
Okay.
You want to? All right, we're gonna cure a coppa. Fine, Mason. Fine. But if you just wanted a Boston butt for barbecue, you're almost done.
If it's
You leave it
mostly
at
raw
this
fat,
end,
we put it over
where the
there.
bloodshot stuff is.
But if it's got
And
meat on it,
usually
don't put it there.
Boston butt does not have the skin on it. So you would take the skin
Is this
off
the
and
meat
leave
fat
whatever amount of
It
fat
is,
you
yep.
feel good about on it. And this whole thing could go on your smoker if you wanted to go that route.
You don't try to roll it anymore, right? 'Cause you can't, right?
Say that
Can
again?
you roll that at all?
What do you mean?
Like you can't fold it into itself, right?
No, not really, not at this point. Because we still have the structure of the shoulder blade inside here.
Oh, right.
So this could be shoulder, and if you wanted to make it 2 smaller Boston butts, you just cut right through here, and then you have 2 of them. Is that clear enough? If you go to a,
When you have a Boston
got 2 of them now.
Cut it again, you got 4?
you can keep the bone in it because you're never going to carve it. It's going to get shredded most times. So your decision as a family is: do you want 1 huge one, 2 good sized ones, 3 portions, or smaller family meals? So, but the bone in to me is an easy one because I don't care. And also, like guys with smokers, there's an argument to be had that the bone actually helps to transition heat from the outside into the center. So it's a little bit more thorough. Cooking and smoking is just outside.
So just keeping it whole.
It's very thorough.
But the coppa, you take the Coca-Cola, you take the bone out.
No.
Capicola.
That's where the head was cut off for this one.
Yup. You cut off the head, right?
Yeah, I did.
There,
Excellent job.
Thank you.
thyroid is up in the neck, so it would be up here. It would be on the throat. It would be on the inside of the bone. It's just
No, sorry, sorry.
there's a lymph. I wish I could tell you.
Yeah, one of these knives is not like the other.
Yeah.
This Boston butt we're going to turn into a capicola, and you can actually just mimic what I'm doing because the other one will probably just grind, I think. You could also
That's
do
trash,
like,
right?
other braised cuts, like on a beef. This is the
Yeah.
chuck.
Here.
And then you can do chuck
I'll take it.
so you don't have to braise it, and it's delicious. You can actually cut steaks up like boneless steaks. Once we take the coppa off, you can actually do coppa steaks, which are also very good. The coppa is from this seam of fat over to here. There's that seam that I was pulling the ribs off with earlier is continuing up here. So you see this seam right here? This is a continuation of that pigment ham we dealt with earlier because we cut right through it. So you can actually put your hand up in here and start separating that. So from here over to the seam of fat is my coppa. Yeah. See what I'm dealing with?
Sorry, if you're gonna make this into just like a normal Boston butt, how much fat do you want in there?
That's up to you, but I usually don't.
All getting targeted at.
Because most of it's going to render off after this. Yeah, or it's dripping down into your smoker somewhere, or you have it in a pan. Yeah. So you don't want to leave it. You would not want to leave this much fat on it. I don't. So you're going to get to a spot in here, John, where your hands really are going to struggle, and that's where it starts connecting to the shoulder blade.
Okay.
The shoulder blade is going to help guide us out to this seam of fat. Okay. From here to here. So now I'm going to pick up my knife and cut, and I'm gonna actually press my knife up against the shoulder blade. And feel it? So your shoulder blade's right there.
Yeah.
I'm coming out towards, just so you know, orientation wise, I'm coming out this way.
Yeah, I
You're a
was
little bit
wondering
backwards,
why.
but you're gonna end up doing the same thing on the other side. I use the shoulder blade to start with because the shoulder blade stand out this way. You'll run out of shoulder blade up here, so it doesn't help you as much. Scapula. Yes, scapula. Scapula. So for those of you following along, this is all shoulder blade. All of this.
Does it have like a turn towards the end that comes back out? Or is
It
that just-
disappears. Yeah.
So I should just go straight across?
Yep. That would be great.
I'm turned around, so the spine is on this side, right? So this is the top?
Spine. Further run.
Okay, so the rest of the leg that you cut through the shoulder blade goes down.
Yeah,
this
the
side.
picnic was down here.
And so when
Head
you,
was up here.
that first seam that you stuck your fingers in, it's on top? That's
It's right here. Just these bones that I told you about that seam.
Right.
It's just a continuation of that seam further up into the pig.
So you're able to start.
About that?
Hang on a second, let me take a picture of that.
You want to do a live shot?
Sure.
And then do a boomerang thing. So
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
You don't need to do that. Okay, editing. Yeah.
Right now, it's something.
So start getting my head in that area. You always want to keep track of this seam. This is where you're going to end. And I say that because sometimes you'll end up coming up here.
So all of this is going in the
All sausage.
sauce.
This way.
You guys okay with that amount of blood there, or you want me to waste a bit?
Looks good to me. Sausage, anything
We
goes,
often
right?
say rolling out the coppa because you're rolling it over this way, but you do want to check back to make sure you're going to the correct seam. You can see the shoulder blade sitting right there, and it's got a bundle of meat around it. So here, it's a coppa that needs trimmed. It's not fully formed
It
yet.
doesn't have any bone in it, though?
No bone. Boneless.
Nice.
This makes a really nice roast. Again, barbecue, though you lose a little bit of your fat cap and some of the other muscle that you have when you have a bone in one. But you can also tie this up and cut steaks because the eye of loin is still right here. This is basically just a pork rib still. Again, which is why the industry cuts 2 ribs over. These are more pork chops for the industry.
Then it tapers off quite.
Yeah, it's going to end like right up here. Now on a coppa, you want a round tube. So if you think sculpturally and look at this curve, it stops curving like right in here and goes that way. So I'm gonna cut that flap off, almost straight across, and then I'll roll this a little bit more. And if there's any other flap that doesn't feel like
You know what this is?
is part of that tube,
Is
just
that
keep cutting.
mostly fat?
Yeah, just go that pile.
Yeah, you're right there. Yeah.
Oh, that's the thing. I can't even water it.
Look at us. Look at us, John.
Yeah, doing the thing now, copas. This is what you're.
That'll be sauce. No problem. So then it's just a matter of trimming and getting off. Sometimes there's some cartilage left over depending on how it was cut. So you just want a tube. It does make a little bit of a hitch right there where that spine curves up toward the neck. But sculpturally, it's a lot like Doug was talking about with the prosciutto. Just make it perfect. Yeah. Now you want to think about curing and shaping. Create a nice little meat tube.
It doesn't sound as appetizing.
Yeah. Has anyone ever had a Denver steak? Anybody know what that terminology is? It comes from this part that I just cut off. It's a type of steak on beef. That's right. That's right. So I just turn
keep rolling, and then try to make it as smooth tube-like as I can.
And you say you're gonna cut that end off where the head came from?
Yeah, the bloodshot stuff you do want to get off of a coppa if you're curing it. At the very top, the last couple thoracic vertebrae, I guess, these feather bones, there's like a little chunk of really hard fat right in here below them, and usually that's good to get out because it never quite cures and cuts the way you want it to. So I usually like cleaning that up a little bit.
So sorry, the part at the end there where the head was cut off,
Square it off.
is that sausage or you toss it?
I usually trim that and look at it. If it looks like it's soiled, like from any part of moving the pig or anything that happened yesterday, I don't use it. But if it just feels like it's blood, then and it's going to go into a cooked sausage, it'll be fine.
Okay.
But you don't want it on a cured cut. You do want to
Gotcha.
cut it away from this piece that's going to be cured. So then you don't want flaps, and again, this superficial cut where it's been bloodshot, because you don't want that in a cured meat. Can you help it?